You're listening to the Moody Mommies podcast.
Audio warning. You may or may not hear kids screaming and yelling in the background, or us screaming or yelling at them to keep it together.
Is it time to get moody?
Yeah,
We're on, guys.
Halloween just ended.
Fresh off the ofrenda, I am Vanessa.
And I'm Jessica. Every time we do that, I feel like we're in like sweaty balls.
Sweaty balls.
What were their names? Do you remember? Molly Shannon and Anna Gasteyer on Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Live is still our lives, and those episodes we haven't probably seen for like over 10 years,
and we talk about it all the time.
About them. We were talking about them last night too.
Were you?
50
we were
years old. Remember when we were telling your mom?
I'm 50. I really do talk about it all the time.
We do. It's part of our lives.
That and like Simpsons quotes were nothing at all. Nothing at all. And like everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like Ned Flanders in his spandex suit shaking his ass. Nothing at all. Feels like I'm wearing. Yeah, I love those shows.
We're
quotable forever.
Life is quotes, guys. It's the best part of it.
I know. So today we are going to talk a little bit about times where we've made mistakes and we're like, oh my God.
Or we've just felt like we looked like the worst mom ever, and the backstory to it was just like the simplest, tiniest thing ever. It's crazy.
I know. As promised, we will talk about the big... Should we talk about that first or last?
What?
Remember you said, like, listen to our next podcast. I'm going to talk about how we ended up with these firefighters.
Oh, yeah. Let's start with that. We could start with that. So, here we go, guys. It's Halloween morning, and Jessica invited us to go trick-or-treating at her job. They do trick-or-treating at your job because they have like this little preschool next door, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty big deal. And so she's like, trick-or-treating starts at 10 a.m. And I'm like, perfect. I'm going to wake up early. Me and the girls are going to get in our costumes. We're going to have breakfast, and we're going to head over there, go trick-or-treating. And it's a good way to get out of the house early to have a ton of fun the whole day. So I'm doing great. I get there, get the kids breakfast. They're eating on the way. I get to your job at 10:17, and trick-or-treating started at 10:30. Yeah. So I'm like, hell yeah, I got time. I actually did it. I'm on time. I was all by myself, no help. So I was like, I got all three of us here on time. We're eating. We're good, So I text you and I told you, oh, I'm here. I just parked, I put the phone down and I'm like, come here, Zoe. Let me brush your hair really fast. So I get her out of her car seat and I walk her to my door. I had the driver door open, and I just sat her in between my legs and I brushed her hair. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to come around and get you right now, Luna. So I grab Zoe by her hand, walk around the car to get Luna, and the car door is locked. And I'm like, what the hell? This did not just happen to me. So I run around the car to my door and try to open. I'm running around the whole car, trying every door, and the whole entire car is locked. My keys are inside. My phone is inside. My child is inside. And she's in her car seat strapped in, and I have no way of getting hold of you now to come and try to help me. I had no idea what I was going to do, and I was just so heartbroken that in a second, our day that was going smooth sailing, perfect, on time, everything, in a blink of an eye, it all just went out the window. Now I'm just oh my God, what am I going to do? My kid's in the car. I have no phone, no keys, nothing. And
all the windows are up.
All the windows are up. It's hot. She's in her little costume. And I'm just flipping out. I have Zoe. So of course she's scared. Oh my God, my sister's in the car. So I'm trying not to panic. And my first instinct, I had like a pair of some heels on. So I was thinking like, I'm just going to take my shoe off and break this window and get my baby out, you know? And I'm like, I look up and there's a car driving down the street because there's like no one outside. Like, and the house that I was parked in front of, they had like a gate where you couldn't just go knock on their door. So I was like, oh gosh. And I did not want to walk away from her. Yeah, I couldn't walk away from the car because I'm like, somebody sees me not next to it, they're going to be like,
why is this baby
call the cops, someone left their child in the car. So this car happens to be driving by and I'm just like, felt like a serial killer in a movie, you know, like trying to wave down a car like for help and like hoping that they're not going to think I'm a crazy person.
Yeah.
And luckily it was this woman and she's like, I was like, I am so sorry. I'm like, I locked my keys in the car, my phone, and my baby's inside of the car and I need help. Like I need a phone, I need something. And she just pulled her phone out and handed it to me instantly, you know, and she's just like, oh my God, is she okay? And I'm like, she's fine. Like I'm talking to her. She thought it was funny. Like, she probably thought I was playing a game with her, you know. But, you know, she was doing great. So I just kept talking to her through the window. And I'm, like, blowing up your phone. You weren't answering. So I'm just, like, in a panic. Like, what do I do? So I called my dad. And my dad's flipping out, like, trying to race to get to me. And
you were calling my desk or you were calling my cell phone?
We called both. We called both. And they weren't. I was like, she's not going to pick up her desk for sure because I knew Justine was there and you were going to go trick-or-treating too.
I felt like I answered it right away. Maybe it wasn't going through.
Really?
Because the first time, because I was holding my phone and when I first saw the call from another number, I was like, oh. And I answered it.
How weird. Yeah, I think I called you like 2 times. I'm not sure.
Maybe it was the second time I answered. The first time I missed, maybe.
Okay. And so, yeah, of course, all of this feels like forever, you know? It's just like eternity. So I called my dad and he's like, okay, I'm on my way. I'll be there right now. Like, you know, you're probably going to have to call 911. And I'm like, okay. So I got a hold of you. You came out. The woman left and you took Zoe. You took Zoe inside, gave her to Ernie.
And of course, like, I gave you my phone and I gave you like the wrong freaking code. I'm like, if you need it, this is my code. And then I'm like, wait a second. Because now the phones are like, that's like my old code thing and I don't use it anymore because I have my fingerprint. So that code is just for like, if I don't know it, then put in this like longer code and it's not numeric anymore. It's like a full thing. So I was like, like, why did I give her the number code? Like, that's not even works.
Yeah. So I'm standing there and I had your phone now. So I'm like, okay, I called my dad and I'm like, Dad, where are you? You had mentioned to me there's not a set of spare keys at home that, you know, he could bring. And I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? So I called him back right away to tell him. And he's like, I'm on my way, but, you know, you're probably going to have to just call 911. You know, you're going to have to call them. They'll get her out in a second. You don't have to get her out. Like, she needs air. And so I'm like, okay, at this point, I'm still just like, I'm just going to break this window. I'm just going to break this window. I don't care how much this window is. It's not about that. I'm going to break it. And there was I think he was like a gardener. He was walking by. He had like this big thing in his hand. And I'm like, excuse me, do you by any chance have anything that like to get into my car? I locked my keys in the car. And he's like, no. And I'm like, my baby's in there. He's like, your baby's in there? He's like,
the same thing, break the window.
Like, can you give me permission? I'll break this window right now. Like, he had this like big metal thing in his hand. And I'm like, I know. And then I was like, I'm fine with breaking the window. Like, if we have to, I don't care. I need to get her out. And at this same moment that him and I are having this conversation, this other man walks up and he's just like, he's like, you're trying to get in her car. He asked the guy something. He's like, yeah, but her baby's in the car. He's like, I know. He's like, you cannot break that window with the baby in the car. And he's like, the
glass is gonna fly.
Right. He's like, well, I was gonna break it on the opposite side, of course, so that the baby's in. He's like, it doesn't matter. He's like, her car is very small. It could hurt the baby, you know. And he's like, you need to call the non-emergency 911. So him and I are both like, we never really heard of non-emergency 911, you know. And so he's like, call it. And then so the guy's like, I don't know what the number is. So he just pulls his phone out and he's like, Siri, call non-emergency 911. And he gets on the phone and he's just starts telling them like, yeah, I have a woman here, you know, she got locked out of her car. Everything is inside her car, her keys, her phone, and her baby is inside the car. And so they started asking, of course, how old Luna was, if she was in the shade, if she was, you know, being responsive. And, you know, we were like, yeah, she's totally fine. Like, she's completely just sitting in there just thinking, like, what are you guys doing? So, you know, she was fine. Like, she's just looking at us like, what are you guys doing? Like, why is nobody getting me out of the car? Like, she was, like, thinking this was something playful, and I was trying not to let her see me freaking out, of course. But so we just told them, like, you know, she's fine, and they're like, okay, we're gonna be there right now. So literally he hung up the phone, and I looked to my left, and there was a police officer pulling out of the driveway, that, like, instantaneously, like, it was really fast. So he pulled up, he looked in the car, he seen Luna, and he's like, oh, is she okay? And we're like, yeah, she's fine. You know, he's like, literally while we were talking to him, we could hear the firemen coming down the street already. Like, it was so fast, you know?
Yeah.
And they pulled up. One of them jumped out of the car with, like, this, like, big yellow long stick, and he just started, like, prying apart my car door, shoved the stick in there, and he couldn't reach the keys like that, so they stuck like this. It kind of looked like a pillow, and they, like, just, like,
Inflated.
pumped some air, opened my door a little bit more, got the keys, unlocked the door, and I threw myself in that car to grab my baby. It was a nightmare, you guys, and I felt really, really, really bad about it. Like, I was so hard on myself about it the entire time. Like, I just felt like, oh my gosh, I just ruined everybody's day. Like, I ruined my kid's day. Jessica invited me over here to trick or treat. Now I ruined hers, and Justine and Ernie's, you know, experience about it. So I felt really bad. And then I just felt like all I kept thinking about was, oh my God, like, look at all these people that are driving on the street. Like, they probably think, like, what kind of mother is she? Like, she locked her baby in the car. Like, what a bad mom. Like, what a bad mom. Like, that's all I kept thinking the entire time we were trick-or-treating. Like, I was
really?
like, yeah, I was so embarrassed. Like, I was just like, even when we saw the woman that gave me her phone, she was your coworker, coincidentally. And we saw her, and she was like, oh, is everything okay? And I just felt even worse. Like, I felt so embarrassed about it, you know? And after we trick-or-treated and the girls had a great time, I put them in the car, and I was driving home with them, and I just, like, had this moment to myself, and I was just like, Vanessa, that was the simplest mistake ever. Mm-hmm. Why are you being so hard on yourself? You know what I mean? Like, I know I do my best to be a great mom, and a blink of an eye, I got out of a car, and my door is all locked behind me. I don't think that should make me have to question the type of mother that I am, you know? So I really felt bad that I was, like, being so hard on myself, and it's part of being a mom, you know? It's part of being a woman and part of your self-doubt, and I thought it was a good lesson for myself, and I think that it's really, really just a good reminder to always remember that. Like, there's going to be little things that from the outside looking in, it may look funny, but you have to know the whole story, you know? And honestly, I could say if motherhood has taught me anything, it's to not judge people. Like, it really is. Like, because you really don't. Like, you hear, like, oh my God, you locked your baby in the car? Like, you think, like, oh my gosh, like, what the hell? Like, who does that, you know? And I cannot even believe that something like this happened to me. And it did. And I know it happened because of just something so simple, and it wasn't anybody's wrongdoing. I just jumped out of the car trying to take my kids somewhere fun, and bam, a little nightmare happened out of it, you know? So I was like, I need to stop.
I know. I felt like, I was like, I don't know. Like, when you got a hold of me, I was like, because I forgot my keys, so I didn't have a way to get back into the building. And I was like, who am I going to get keys from? What do I do? Who do I call? And Ernie's like, well, I think you two were like, well, call security. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm like looking everywhere in my desk for the security's number. And I couldn't find it. So I was like, well, let me just go. And my boss let me borrow her keys. And I ran out there to you. And then I was like, let me just get Zoe out of here, you know, like, let me just take her so she can be with Justine and we can figure out what we need to do. Then I got back, and then I found the little security number. And I called him, and he's like, oh, I'll just stay on the phone with you. I'm like, well, I don't have my cell phone. I'm on my desk phone, you know, so I'll just come out front and meet you. But he didn't have anything. He also didn't know what to do. He's kind of like a young security.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of, like, going more to be nosy than anything. And I'm just like, well, what are we supposed to do? Mm-hmm. And then by the time I walked back over there, you were already there. The fire department was already around the corner. And I was just thinking, too, like, why didn't I think of calling 911 or non-emergency or whatever? Like, why was I standing there, too? Like, what do we do? What do we do? With, like,
it's
my hands in the air.
When, you know, you think, like, oh, when something like that happens, you watch a movie, you're like, oh, my gosh, I would have done this. That. But really, when you're in that moment, like, you're really not thinking clearly because you're just so focused on, like, the little disaster you're trying to get through. So,
yeah.
Even myself, you know, like, I should have just, and instead of calling either you or my dad, I should have just asked that lady for a phone and just called 911 myself. But
yeah.
I don't know why I was thinking of trying to get you and someone to come and help me when I could have just called help myself.
Yeah. But my mom kind of did a similar thing, too, where she had left to run an errand, and she came back home, and there were some stray dogs. She said they looked like pit bulls in our yard, like on our porch, and just didn't fall asleep. So she's like, I can't get in the house. You know, these dogs are here. And she's waited around to see if the dogs would go, and they didn't go. So she called me, like, frantic. Like, I called 911. They said they didn't have any, you know, thing to get the dogs. I needed to call animal control, but I don't have a pin. I don't have anything. How am I supposed to get a hold of animal control? And she's just, like, really, really upset. And I was like, okay. And then I hang up with her, and then I call her back, and I was like, wait, so did you call animal control, yes or no? She's like, no, I don't have the number. I don't have anything. And I'm like, okay, describe the dogs to me. You know, these are the questions they're going to ask you. So I'm asking her the questions, and then I hang up. And then I call, and then afterwards I was just like, I just Googled the number. Like, why couldn't she do that herself? Like, why did I have to do that? And it's like this, it's in the moment. Like, you don't know what to do. I don't have anything to write it down. Like, you're talking to me. It's like, okay, but you don't even think that you could just hang up and Google it yourself.
Yeah.
So it's just like,
it's the panic, you know, you're just so panicked. You're just like, oh my gosh, is this really happening? I think you're just so, like, in shock of, like, what is really happening right now. Yeah. It's unfortunate. And then it doesn't help, like, you know, we recently bought this little second car, so it's like a 2000, so it has like an old school, like, little alarm on it. So that's why when I got out to walk around the car, the door shut behind me, and because the keys were still in the ignition, all the doors just locked. So, like, I have a Pilot that's like a 2013 Pilot. Something like that would never happen in that car. So I'm, like, just adjusting to getting used to this and remembering the little tricks to make sure it doesn't happen again, you know. But it's a very unfortunate thing. But it was a total mom fail.
Yeah, but she was fine in there. She, like, didn't cry once.
No, wasn't crying. She was like, I mean, it felt like forever, but it did feel like forever. It was pretty short. Like, we got her out of there very fast. Yeah, you know? But
it did feel long.
It felt forever, and
it was one of those times going super slow.
It really was. Like, it just, I felt so bad. I was just like, oh my gosh, I ruined Halloween.
You did ruin Halloween. The girls didn't even notice.
They didn't, I guess, but it was crazy. So there it is, guys. There's my horror story of Halloween. And so if it happens to you, you know what to do now. Non-emergency 911 immediately.
Yeah, first call.
First call. Don't call anyone else.
So. And because they'll be there in a flash.
Mm-hmm. They literally were. They're so fast.
I know. Yeah, I mean, luckily that guy was there that knew exactly what to do.
I know, because I would have just ended up with a broken window and got my kid out myself.
Yeah, it was quick and fine.
It was a quick little nightmare, but I still can't believe it happened to me, you know?
Yeah, I was talking to one of my friends the other day about how it just feels like why do all the other parents look like so happy and so together, and I feel like, oh my God, I've lost my mind. And then I know, like, I've been with you where people have come up to you and like, you are doing such a great job, you know? And I know, like, you feel in yourself like, what am I doing? Am I making good choices? But like, you know, you get affirmations from like random people, and then you're like, from the outside, like, it does look like I still have it together. And so then it gives you perspective, like, I'm sure that lady does not know what she's doing either. You know, like, none of us know what we're doing. We're like grabbing at straws. Is that what it's called?
I'm pretty
Grasping for straws? I don't know.
We're hanging on by a thread here, guys.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah, I'm trying to think of an example of a time that, like, I was like, why did I do that? I mean, there's times, of course, where I, like, snap at Justine, and I'm just
You'll
like,
scream at them, and then you feel
like,
bad about it later.
Why did I yell like that? Like, and I think a lot of it, and I told you this, is that, you know, my mom is a lot to handle, and I'm trying to, like, I've been the crazy girlfriend, like, a million times. So, like, with my husband now, I try really hard to, like,
be the anti.
Yeah, like, I don't want to be that person ever again.
The girl you were.
Yeah, so it's not hard to, like, not be that person, because obviously he's not like anybody else that I've ever dated. But because, you know, there and work, and I have to be patient and the reliable one all the time, that when it comes to, like, okay, now there's this little person that's, like, throwing a tantrum, I'm like, I can't put up with this. I can't do this. You know, like, it's too much.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just, I feel really guilty afterward, like, dude, like, why did I lose my patience on her and, like, not on somebody else, you know? But
yeah. I think I actually took a positive disciplining parenting class. You know, they basically just remind you about, yes, there's going to be times that you make mistakes as a parent, but you get to do them over, you know, have a talk with your child and tell them, I'm sorry, you know, I got upset, and just talk to them about it. That's like the best way, and you can fix it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, we do that all the time. And I like that I did that, because then Justine is able to turn around and do the same. You know, there's
when
some
she
days,
makes a mistake.
Yeah, like,
exactly.
she'll be acting up, throwing tantrums, and then when she comes down, she'll come back and be like, I'm sorry, Mommy. I'm sorry I wasn't listening.
Yeah.
I'm
Zoe
sorry,
does
whatever.
the same thing. She'll be like, I'm sorry I was crying like that with you, and I know I shouldn't have done that, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know? I'm just like, oh, I'm still mad at you.
I'm a little mad still.
Yeah, dude, like last night, like we had people over for the Day of the Dead, and Zoe's like freaking throwing a tantrum for a cookie, like in front of everybody that was here. And I'm just like, why do you have to do things like this to me right now, kid? Come on, you know?
Yeah.
It just makes me mad. Because, you know, you try your hardest, like, to discipline in this positive way, and there's going to be moments that you just lose it, you know?
Yeah. Maybe we could talk to the other Vanessa a little bit about this too, because she has a lot of
tips and tricks.
Yeah, so probably the next episode you hear from us, we'll be talking with my cousin-in-law. Is it a thing?
I guess you can call her your cousin. She's just your cousin now.
Now I have two cousins named Vanessa.
Yes.
About communicating with your kids.
Yeah.
And she works at a preschool, and she works with special needs kids, so she had to really be focused on teaching small kids how to communicate.
And having a lot of patience.
Like a crazy amount. So we'll get her on here. Hopefully, should be next episode in 2 weeks for you guys.
Yeah.
But
until then, try not to lock any kids in the car, and discipline those kids in the most positive way you can.
I didn't know what to do other than just give me a hug, Vanessa. It's gonna be all right. That's all I do is hug you. It's all right. It's all right.
Shit happens.
Uh-huh.
All right, guys.
Stay moody. Say Moody Mommies.
Moody Mommies.
Moody Mommies podcast.